This seat is reserved for close family. My nephew Tyler sneered, pushing me aside. I lost it and said, then maybe your real family can cover that $6,200 bill. I turned around and left them to deal with the chaos. I, 47M, never thought I'd be the villain in someone else's story, but here we are. My brother died 3 years ago in a motorcycle accident. Left behind his wife and their son Tyler, who was barely 18 at the time. Being the only family they had left, I stepped up. Not because I had to, but because that's what family does. Or so I thought. The funeral expenses alone were crushing. My brother had always been the free spirit type, great guy, terrible with money. No life insurance, minimal savings, and a mountain of debt. While his widow was drowning in grief and paperwork, I quietly handled everything. The funeral home, the cemetery plot, the reception afterward. $6,200 out of my own pocket, but I never mentioned it. What kind of person brings up money at a time like that? Over the next 3 years, I became their safety net. When Tyler needed school supplies, I bought them. When their car broke down, I paid for repairs. When they couldn't make rent one particularly tough month, I covered it without being asked. I attended every one of Tyler's baseball games, helped him with college applications, and even co-signed his student loans when his credit wasn't enough. I thought we had built something real. Tyler called me Uncle Mike, asked for advice about girls, and seemed genuinely grateful for everything I did. His mother would tear up sometimes, telling me how much my support meant to them both. I felt like I was honoring my brother's memory by taking care of his family. Then Tyler got engaged. The wedding planning started immediately. His fiancée came from money, and they wanted everything perfect. Designer dress, expensive venue, open bar for 200 guests. I watched the budget climb higher and higher, wondering how they'd afford it all, but I kept my mouth shut. Tyler was 21 now, technically an adult, and I figured he'd ask if he needed help. He never did. Instead, I started hearing things secondhand. Tyler's future in-laws were paying for most of the wedding. His mother mentioned how generous they were being, how they'd welcome Tyler like their own son. I felt a strange pang of something, not quite jealousy, but definitely displacement. These people had known Tyler for 2 years. I'd been there since he was born. The wedding invitation arrived on expensive cardstock with gold embossing. Very fancy, very expensive. I RSVP'd immediately, bought a nice gift from their registry, and looked forward to celebrating with them. The day of the wedding, I arrived early at the church. The ceremony was beautiful, and I felt genuinely happy watching Tyler promise to love and cherish his new wife. During the receiving line, he hugged me tight and thanked me for being there. His mother squeezed my hand and whispered how proud my brother would have been. Everything felt normal until we got to the reception. The venue was stunning, crystal chandeliers, white linens, flowers everywhere. I found my way to the seating chart, scanning for my name. Table 12. Seemed reasonable enough. I made my way over and found my assigned seat. That's when I noticed something odd. Table 12 was tucked away in the back corner, partially hidden behind a decorative pillar. The other guests at my table were clearly distant relatives or family friends, people I'd never met who seemed equally confused about why they'd been relegated to the cheap seats. Meanwhile, front and center, I could see the head table where Tyler and his new wife sat with their wedding party. Right next to them were 2 large round tables marked with small gold signs, reserved for close family. I watched Tyler's new in-laws holding court at those tables. His mother-in-law was showing off photos on her phone, probably of the engagement party I hadn't been invited to. His father-in-law was telling animated stories that had everyone laughing. Tyler's own mother sat at one of these tables, beaming with pride. But what really caught my attention was seeing Tyler's college roommate at the close family table. This kid I'd met maybe 3 times in my life was sitting where I apparently didn't belong. I tried to shake it off. Maybe there had been a mistake with the seating arrangements. Maybe they'd run out of room at the family tables. I focused on enjoying my meal and making polite conversation with the strangers around me. During the father-daughter dance, Tyler's new father-in-law took the microphone. He gave a heartfelt speech about gaining a son, about how Tyler had become part of their family from the moment he'd walked through their door. He talked about the fishing trips they'd taken together, the business advice he'd given Tyler, and how proud he was to call him son. The crowd applauded. Tyler wiped away tears. His mother dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. I sat in the back corner, feeling like a stranger at my own nephew's wedding. When the dancing started, I decided to congratulate Tyler personally. I made my way through the crowd, dodging servers and tipsy relatives, until I reached the head table area. Tyler was standing near the family tables, laughing with his new brother-in-law about something. I approached with a smile, ready to give him a hug and tell him how happy I was for him. That's when it happened. I was about 3 feet away when Tyler noticed me approaching. His expression shifted slightly, not hostile, but definitely guarded. He stepped sideways, effectively blocking my path to the family seating area. Tyler looked me up and down, then glanced back at his new relatives who were watching our interaction with mild curiosity. When he spoke, his voice was loud enough for them to hear, but carried a tone I'd never heard from him before. He told me this seat was reserved for close family, his voice dripping with condescension. Then he actually put his hand on my shoulder and physically guided me away from the area, like I was some random wedding crasher who didn't understand boundaries. The dismissal was so casual, so public, and so completely unexpected that I stood there for a moment in shock. This was the same kid I'd helped raise. The same kid whose college tuition I'd helped secure. The same kid who'd called me crying when he'd been homesick his freshman year. But looking at him now, surrounded by his new family's wealth and acceptance, I realized something had fundamentally changed. I wasn't his uncle anymore. I was just some guy who used to help out when times were tough. The anger hit me like a physical force. 3 years of quietly supporting them. 3 years of never asking for recognition or repayment. 3 years of believing I was doing the right thing, honoring my brother's memory by taking care of his family. And this is how it ended. Pushed aside at a wedding I'd helped make possible by a kid who'd apparently forgotten where he came from. I looked around at the expensive decorations, the open bar, the designer dress, the crystal chandeliers. All of it funded by his new family's generosity. None of it acknowledging the foundation I'd helped build that got him to this point. That's when I decided they needed a reminder. I turned back to Tyler, who was already starting to walk away, probably assuming I'd slink back to my corner table like a properly chastened distant relative. My voice carried further than I intended when I spoke. I told him that maybe his real family could cover that $6,200 bill then. The effect was immediate and devastating. Tyler stopped mid-step. His new father-in-law, who'd been in the middle of telling another story, went quiet. Several conversations around us died as people turned to see what was happening. Tyler's face went through several expressions in rapid succession: confusion, recognition, and then pure panic. He knew exactly what bill I was talking about. His mother, who'd been laughing at something across the table, suddenly looked like she'd seen a ghost. I didn't wait around to watch the fallout. I'd said what needed to be said. I walked straight out of that reception hall, got in my car, and drove home. Update 1. The call started the next morning. Tyler's mother was the first, crying and apologizing and begging me not to be angry. She explained that the seating arrangements had been handled by the bride's family, that she'd had no idea I'd been placed so far away from everyone else. She swore Tyler hadn't meant to be disrespectful. But here's the thing, Tyler didn't call. Not that day, not the next day, not for the rest of the week. His mother kept calling though. She told me how embarrassed Tyler was, how the bride's family had started asking questions about what bill I'd been referring to. Apparently, Tyler had never mentioned to his new in-laws that anyone had helped financially after his father's death. As far as they knew, he and his mother had handled everything on their own. The bride's father, who'd been so proud to welcome Tyler into their family, was now wondering what other financial obligations might be lurking in the background. The bride herself was questioning why her new husband had never mentioned this debt to his uncle. Tyler's mother begged me to call him, to work things out, to not let this ruin our relationship. She offered to pay me back herself, even though I knew she didn't have that kind of money. I told her I didn't want the money back. I never had. What I wanted was basic respect and acknowledgement of what our relationship had meant. What I'd gotten instead was public humiliation from someone I'd helped raise. Update 2. 2 weeks after the wedding, Tyler finally called. He started with apologies, explaining that he'd been overwhelmed with wedding planning and honeymoon preparations. He said he hadn't meant to hurt my feelings, that the seating arrangement really had been his in-laws' decision, and that he'd been trying to make a good impression on his new family. Then he asked about the money. He wanted to know exactly what the $6,200 covered, whether I had receipts, and what kind of payment plan we could work out. His tone was businesslike, like we were negotiating a loan rather than discussing 3 years of family support. I realized then that he still didn't get it. This wasn't about the money. This was about being treated like family instead of like a creditor. I told him to forget about the money. I told him I was done being his safety net. I told him that his new family seemed perfectly capable of taking care of him now, so he wouldn't need my help anymore. He tried to argue, saying I was being unreasonable, that he'd always been grateful for my help. But his definition of gratitude apparently didn't include treating me with basic respect at his own wedding. I hung up. Update 3. It's been 6 months now since the wedding. Tyler's mother still calls occasionally, updating me on their lives and hoping I'll change my mind about reconciling. She tells me Tyler and his wife are struggling financially. Turns out his new in-laws' generosity only extended to the wedding itself. Their rent is higher than they can afford, and Tyler's entry-level job isn't covering all their expenses. She's hinted several times that they could really use my help, especially with Tyler's student loan payments coming due. Apparently, his new family isn't interested in co-signing anything or providing ongoing financial support. I listened politely and changed the subject. Last month, I got a text from Tyler. No apology, no acknowledgement of what had happened. Just a casual message asking if I wanted to grab lunch and catch up. Like nothing had ever happened. Like he could just pretend that night never occurred and we'd go back to the way things were. I didn't respond. The truth is, I'm not angry anymore. I'm just done. Done being taken for granted. Done being someone's backup plan. Done pretending that blood relation automatically entitles someone to unlimited support without basic respect in return. My brother would probably be disappointed in me for walking away from his son. But my brother also would never have treated someone the way Tyler treated me that night. He would have made sure I knew I was valued, that my sacrifices mattered, that I belonged at the family table. Tyler made his choice when he decided his new family's approval was more important than honoring the relationship we'd built. He chose status over loyalty, appearance over authenticity. Now he gets to live with that choice. I've started volunteering at a local youth center, mentoring kids who actually appreciate guidance and support. It's amazing how much more fulfilling it is to help people who don't take your kindness for granted. Sometimes I wonder if Tyler ever thinks about that night, if he ever realizes what he lost when he pushed me aside. But mostly, I don't think about him at all anymore. I'm finally putting my energy into relationships that go both ways. It's a much better investment. The $6,200? I consider it the cost of learning who Tyler really was underneath all those years of gratitude and family dinners. Expensive lesson, but worth every penny to know where I actually stood. Some bridges burn themselves. You just have to be smart enough not to rebuild them.